Welcome, folks. This is Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Network. And this is something we do every week, whether there's news or whether there's not. We have a man that was on hand. Matt Derrick's going to join us here in just a second. Welcome to Locked On Chiefs.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Now, I know it's early. It's not even July yet, but Locked On Fantasy has begun because fantasy football is about to begin. And I don't know if Matt's going to tell you about that. I'm certainly not, but there's fantasy everywhere. You should check it out. Matt Derrick, our special guest today. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great. Am I giving it away to everybody if I tell them that there's no news and then they're just going to stop listening? Because you should keep listening. Although I don't know if there's any news. It's right. It's July. It's the beginning of July. We are at the peak distance between there actually being any football news in the past and any actual football news in the future. Mm-hmm. And we're in that midpoint of the absolute dearth at the bottom because there's nothing going on.
What do they call this? The darkest moment at sea between New York and London. You can't see land. Everything's dark. Yeah. Here we are, folks. We'll say something. I'll say something dumb, I'm sure. But there are some things happening, and I really want to get into one that I am still just cringing over. And I know it's been a few days, but we mentioned this charity basketball thing that Tyreek Hill put on. And unlike me, just seeing it from afar, you were actually there. Just in general, what was the atmosphere like in this thing?
Yeah, pretty jovial. I mean, everybody was there to have a good time, and it was an interesting crowd. I mean, it wasn't maybe as big as some other charity games in the past. I think that they maybe changed the prices and the sponsorships a bit to maybe raise money a little bit differently and not have as big a crowd as in the past. You know, there was still a little bit of social distancing, but still pretty decent turnout, I thought, all things considered, with everything going on this time of year. And certainly from the teammates as well. I mean, quite a few of the players were out there. And it was a spirited game. I mean, I'm not going to say it was quite NBA all-star pace. It was faster than that. But it was also highlight pace. I mean, it was, there wasn't a lot of hard contact out there. These guys know, what the business is. They're out there having fun. And sure, they're running fast and everything, but they're not trying to take anybody's legs out from underneath them. There's nobody hitting the floor hard. So I think you can take a little bit of a breath when you hear Chiefs and celebrity basketball. Yeah, it's for the highlights. It's for fun, but they have bragging rights, but they're not pushing it too hard.
I mean, and we know that they play ball in the locker room all the time. I know there's 2-on-2 that is like unhandily taken care of. But I also noticed in some of those clips, no one's hitting the boards too hard. Like there's a lot of dudes who are like, in career years or contract years, everybody take a shot and step away, basically. Really the biggest highlight play. I mean, sure, Chris Jones had a dunk, and one that he was hanging from the rim on. I was afraid that I didn't know if a boys and girls club rim could sustain Chris Jones hanging from the rim, and he was doing the big time Charles Barkley hanging from the rim on that one. But the biggest highlight play of them all was Marcus Kemp, who had a couple of absolute, tomahawk dunks during warmups. I mean, that guy can sky. Wow.
He was going up through the lane for a dunk and another tomahawk dunk during the game. And Devin Funchess got in the way and swatted that thing away. So the play of the game was definitely a defensive play.
Well, I like hearing that. That's why I don't watch the NBA, because they don't remember how to do that anymore. That's definitely good to hear. I wish Devin Funchess brought that to the field as well, but that's okay. For me, a couple of things that we can take from this. A, how did you think Tyrann Mathieu played, knowing that the situation that he's in?
Tyrann Mathieu plays, celebrity challenge basketball like it's a contract year too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I had not seen Tyrann play a lot of basketball in the locker room.
Okay.
And I tell you what, he is good. He was the best point guard on the floor. So if you are putting together a team of Chiefs basketball players, Tyrann Mathieu is your point guard. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Make Tyreek your shooting guard. He likes to shoot, but Tyrann's the guy who can make he was making length of the court passes. he's got some floor vision. I mean, you see the same vision you see on the football field. He's got that on the basketball floor.
It carries over, and I saw a little hook move when he was down near the baseline. Like the guy's got some talent all the way around. He's a heck of an athlete. We'll talk about him coming up, but I want to talk about the takeaways from that. We'll do that on the backside of this, folks. Check out our sponsors. And BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to make all your sports action bets. Baseball season through the roof, NBA, NHL, obviously football, even UFC and MMA. Before the next contest, go to BetOnline on your laptop or your mobile device and check out all the sporting news, the odds, the bonuses, everything you need to place your action. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. It's your chance to get in the game as teams prep for their runs at playoffs or even a brand new season. Head over to the website, use your device, and check it out today. You'll receive a 50% bonus on your deposit. That's 50% on top of what you deposit at betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts, and use the promo code LOCKEDON. Let them know that we sent you over there. And so, having heard from the folks that are helping us, folks, make sure you like and sub and hit the thing over on YouTube and follow the sponsors. Two things for me. If you're Brett Veach, this seems like a departure for him. This had to have been sanctioned by the organization to have that many guys from one team on the floor.
I mean, in most cases, guys playing basketball and celebrity events, I mean, around the league, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, a lot of teams do it and everything. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes took it to a whole different level, and that was the level of concern. But, a lot of guys, they have nothing in their contracts that says that they can't do this. Mahomes apparently does, so that's why he wouldn't show up for something like this. And hey, guys who are hurt or have any concerns about that, I mean, you're not going to see them in a game like this. I talked to Marcus Kemp, even who's had the ACL injury in the past, and he's like, no, I'm 100%. And if there was any question about that, wouldn't be out of the game like this. So these guys know that, they got to take care of their bodies. And like I said, I mean, when you're at the skill level and the athletic level that they are, really the biggest thing you got to be concerned about is just guys going at it too hard and playing too physical. Fast paced and physical are not the same thing. And so they were playing with great bit of speed, but there was no contact. There was no fouling. I mean, this was a gentlemanly game of basketball that you saw Friday night.
I like that. And so who was on the court that we didn't hear? I heard Hitch was there, but I didn't see physical evidence of that.
Hitch was there, and surprisingly good basketball player. When I saw him out there, I thought, I'm not so sure about this. Decent speed, look, he's got some moves. He was able to drive to the basket a couple of times. That was pretty impressive. Probably the funniest moment, I don't know if this was an indication that Chris Jones was maybe a borderline call or maybe was not planning to be at the game. But he was the last arrival for warm-ups and for getting ready, and they didn't have a jersey for him. So Colin Saunders donated his jersey to Chris Jones, and then Colin Saunders played the game without a jersey. But even though Colin, and I didn't post it because I didn't want to throw Colin under the bus, because I had a video of him trying to drive the lane that did not end well. So I didn't want to throw him under the bus, because at the same time, the dude was the only guy in the it's a celebrity game. So they had a 4-point shot from Steph Curry range. Colin Saunders, I think, was the only one to hit one of those.
Oh, wow.
So he's got a stroke from deep. So give him credit for that one. Team Gary Dieter was, the winners of the game. So, obviously Gary Dieter was there. Chris Jones was the MVP. You mentioned Hitch. I'm trying to remember anybody else that was there. Quite a few. Cornell Powell, Dorian O'Daniel were a couple of the players who were watching from the stand. So, for late June celebrity event, charity event in Kansas City, pretty good turnout from the team.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I will say this: Colin and Chris play together, I think, in that locker room league a lot.
They
so I would have liked to have seen that. But that brings me to like the less fun part of it. This is all good natured. Now I'm glad that they do it, but for me, the concern about injury is one thing that makes me, cringe a little bit. I said that on social media as well. But the other side for me, as somebody that studies athleticism and how physiology works, the cross-training aspect of this, like you said, there were some surprises out there. Guys that from their football play, you wouldn't necessarily have thought had that kind of skill on a court. The way that especially these two sports cross over with the stops and starts and the change of direction, I think is very good training for younger players. But it gets lost, I think, at this level. And it tells me that cross training is still a thing for this particular roster that will continue. It'll still be in the locker room, I'm sure, but I think that helps them on one of those things that we don't really see every week.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, basketball is something that is just a big deal in NFL locker rooms. And especially, the Chiefs locker room is a really big deal because you're right. I mean, a lot of these guys, have played basketball before. I mean, even the big guys. I mean, and some of them, Colin Saunders played a little point forward in high school and everything. I mean, he was a pretty good athlete. So, and all these guys are good athletes. So it's not like anything's new to them. I mean, okay, maybe the big guys thinking that they are 3-point shooters is a little bit exaggerated. But I think you're right as far as, the cross-training skills. The footwork of an NFL player taking to a basketball court isn't going to be the same as an NBA player. That's just crazy. Yeah. But at the same time, the footwork required to be an NFL player, especially, if you're with the changing of directions and keeping up with people. You see how it translates on the court. And I think that's a big reason why that, even these guys are in NFL, basketball is still something that they like to stay in touch with. And even just from a health standpoint and working out, Tyreek Hill mentioned this a couple of weeks ago in the Zoom press conferences that he was taking it a little bit easier this year, during the offseason and maybe not working out quite as much. And, I asked some of the players at the game about that, and that was a fairly common response, was that a lot of the guys, were working out maybe a little bit less and getting a little bit more rest this offseason. And there's a big reason why. They've had 2 really long seasons. They've played more games in the last 2 years than any other team in the league, and it's not even close. There's a lot of teams, they've played 6 more games than those teams. Their AFC West opponents, they've played 6 more games than those teams over the last 2 seasons, and that adds up. So I think you saw the impact of having 2 deep playoff runs that is having these guys take a little bit of time off. If they're going to work out, basketball's a great way to do it. So, in the long run, maybe that's not the worst thing for these guys.
No, and again, that different stimulus, so that when they do their position-specific work, I think it has a tendency, the body, to adapt in different ways. And if you take it off course, it'll actually react a little bit more than if you do the same workouts, the same motions over and over again. And so I'm actually glad to hear that it's not just Tyreek. I think Tyreek has a great support system around him for his trainers and guys that try to keep him on his toes physically and keep his body adapting. But that's very well said, that there's a lot of different ways to go about it. We used to see Alex Smith, train underwater, carrying rocks and stuff in Hawaii. That's also an interesting thing. I know there are guys that come up to my neck of the woods up here at altitude to train for a couple weeks before they go away for this July run so they can relax a little bit. I think that is all extremely interesting to me, but I'm glad to see that the team is embracing it as a whole, not just, the outlying superstar that I think we might have seen in years past.
Yeah, I think there's a definite tone amongst these guys that have been together for the last couple of years that they need to recharge the batteries. And I think that even goes beyond the physical part of it, because 2020 season was emotionally draining too. Just with everything dealing with the pandemic and the postseason and some of the ups and downs of everything just away from the game. I think it was a tough year. And so I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's probably a good thing to be hearing that there's these guys who are trying to find a way to energize themselves in a different way, maybe work out and stay in shape in a little bit different way, take care of their bodies, take care of their minds, and come back and a little bit more refreshed and maybe in a different mindset when they get to training camp.
Yeah, and that's the next thing that I want to talk about is how do you take that preparation to day one training camp forward. We'll get to that coming up next. One thing you have to know that we're going to tell you about is Built Bar, because they are the best tasting protein bars ever. And it doesn't matter what your favorite flavor is, whether it's coconut brownie chunk or maybe the new grasshopper, the mint. It's incredible. And I even like, this is my new favorite, the toffee almond. All of these have things in common, including 17 grams of protein, only 130 to 150 calories, depending on the flavor. There's all kinds of amazing flavors that keep circulating, and lots of special limited editions that you have to go to the website to check out. You can get that mint brownie or the raspberry or any of these whenever you go over to BuiltBar.com. When you do, use the LOCKED15 code, and you'll get 50% off of your first order. That's the promo code LOCKED15 at BuiltBar.com. So you led me into it perfectly. Thank you, by the way, because sometimes my transitions get a little long-winded. But we're talking about 40 games in the last 2 seasons. If all goes to plan, we're talking about 60 games inside of 36 months. That is a long haul. So not only does changing up your training help, but I think the recuperative measures that I see a lot more of the Chiefs players at least admitting to or putting on social media so that it's out there a little bit, I feel like that's a great subsequent therapy along with what Rick Burkholder and the staff do. But what does it do for you in terms of your expectations about how those guys come in and start camp? Do you expect things to be throttled back the first week or two, knowing that it is a little bit longer and they have that break after the third preseason game?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective on it, because with the new CBA, I mean, this is the first year that we're really going to get to experience, how the new CBA is going to work out for training camp, since we didn't really get to see that last year. I mean, it was a truncated period and things were a little bit different. This year, players are going to report, but then they've got a 5-day acclimation period this year. And yeah, it's going to be interesting, because I think that you're going to see a lot of players, and from the Chiefs perspective, I think that, the couple of weeks leading up to training camp, I think they're going to probably start ramping up on their own. They're going to have their own programs that probably Rick has given to them, way to just kind of get in shape and get ready to hit the field. But they're going to have that 5-day acclimation period. And some of that is going to be those practices that are open to the public. So if you're looking for contact, I mean, if you're looking to be, getting to see the one-on-one drills, and you're wanting to see a full speed contact practice, first 4 or 5 days of camp won't be for you. I mean, It's going to be a lot of, they're allowed to put on, spiders, and some of the soft pads, the last couple of days, and that first 5-day ramp up. But, it's going to be, really just high speed, no contact practices. And I think you're right. I mean, with the one fewer preseason game, and then they've got that gap at the end too, that the coaches have to try and figure out between that last preseason game and the beginning of the season. How do you keep the edge? How do you keep everybody going so that, you're kind of on your same, building for the season path, but you don't have any games, got nothing to be ready for. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they balance it. And, I think we've seen a little bit of, Andy Reid's adjustment too, because, if, you look at the practice schedule this year, every single practice starts at the same time, and they're going to run all the same length too, I imagine. I don't think this is going to be a case where some practices are going to be 2.5 hours and some are going to be 1 hour and 40 minutes. You might see some of that when they do some of the 10-10-10 stuff that, Reid does do. So you'll see some truncated practices. But that's just a reflection of the new CBA and how long practices can be, how long they can be on the field. Those workouts will all be about the same. Whereas in the past, they've varied that a lot. Now there's going to be a little bit more consistency, and I'll be really interested to see how Andy Reid does handle those last few weeks after the third preseason game when you're trying to get ready for the season.
And folks, that is a 9:15 start for all of those practices as it stands right now, weather dependent, of course. I want to finish up real quick because this week we're hearing rumblings, we're hearing little things about landscaping businesses from old Honey Badger out there. And we've been talking about that. We've thought all along this was going to happen before camp. I thought it might have been done by now originally, but I know he does a lot of tweeting and he does a lot of tweet deleting as well. But when we take a step forward, it clearly seems like it's ramping towards that eventual conclusion. The hints are all over the place. Do you feel, just knowing what we know about the organization, that they are A, inclined, and B, capable of making him the highest paid DB out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely the inclination is there. I mean, I don't get the sense that, they're dramatically far apart. I mean, I think Tyrann Mathieu, through some of his subtweeting and comments and sub-Facebooking, whatever it may be, I think he sent the message he wants to be amongst the highest paid in the league. At the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if he left a little bit of money on the table to be able to stay in Kansas City, because it's a good situation. But, let's face it. I mean, in the NFL, money is respect. I mean, money is reputation, and that's how these guys measure it. So, hey, Tyrann Mathieu wants to get what he wants to get, but he also wants to be known for scoreboard purposes, that he's up there with the other guys around the league. So, the fact that he's tweeting out, what guys' average annual value contracts are, I mean, that's telling you he wants to be in the top 10. I mean, he wants to be top 5. He wants to be on that scoreboard. And there's ways that if you're the Chiefs, you can do that and give Tyrann his scoreboard while taking care of yourself on the salary cap too, and making it work. That's a little bit, hard to say team friendly when you're talking about $15-20 million under the cap for a defensive back, but there's ways you can do that. So that, I mean, and talking to Tyrann, at the charity game, this is the first time we've gotten the chance to talk to him in person and not on a Zoom about the contract. And yeah, I mean, he had a smile on his face and seemed very confident with just that'll take care of itself. Yeah. And I felt like that was maybe a little bit different tone that you get in person than you get on a Zoom, which is why I'd be great with, getting back in person again. Change the news that you get.
Well, and we appreciate that, because just the littlest things, the impression, the way somebody stands at the podium, the way they react to questions, that's important. It all plays into it. And I think that I agree with you completely. I think he will leave a little bit. I think he wants to be in that top 5 so he can say he's with the guys that he's tweeting out. But I think he understands as well, if you want to not only win another ring, but another couple of them, you have to do what Patrick did and leave a little bit of room for somebody else. And Chris did the same thing. I think he could have held out for more, to tell you the truth. And as long as you're in that top echelon, I think then the bottom line ends up for every player is, how do you match up to the guys on the field? And if you are the best at what you do, you're the best at what you do, no matter what the price tag is. So I'm optimistic that they can get that done. I still think it'll get done before camp. Do you?
Yeah, I do. And, and while we talk about money being a big factor, you know what? How long you're going to be in a place too makes a big difference too. And one thing that certainly you get the idea from Tyrann Mathieu is that he wants a long-term deal. He wants something that's, going to be on just one, maybe getting him one more contract. I think he'd be fine if this was his last contract in the NFL. Not to say that, hey, he's not gonna be able to play for a much longer time, but I think that he would be fine if this was his final landing place. And if that's the case, longer term security can be a bigger deal than short-term security. But I get the indication from both sides that something will get done.
Folks, Chiefs Digest is where you can get all of Matt's work and all his insight that he doesn't share with us. There are bits in there that you have to go read for yourselves. Please do that. And we thank you for checking us out. Make sure you like and sub on the YouTube channel. We've gotten a ton of you over there, and enjoy it on Apple and Spotify and all the normal places. We're not going anywhere. We are now dual media here at Locked On Chiefs, and I hope you guys enjoy that. Thank you for listening to us today. Check out Matt, and we'll talk to you next time.